Hey nerds! Guess where you are? You are at a new episode of, well, you're at the very first episode of Where the Streetlights End, a podcast about horror, history, culture, and folklore. And previously known as Back Alley Alchemist. I have been on a hiatus for over a year, as you might know, if you are subscribed to me and have noticed that I haven't uploaded since August of 2023. That is because I have been working on my master's degree. I have 2 months. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to have my master's at the end of December. And I finally, over there, if you can see on the camera, I finally got a frame for my bachelor's degree. So now I have proof that I am a bachelor and soon to be a master of history. So that means you can trust me now, because I know not to say stuff if I don't know the stuff. And I feel like if you've been watching me and listening to me for long enough, you know that if I don't know something, I say so. But now I have proof that I know a lot. At least when it comes to history. I do a lot of science and stuff too. But anyway, I'm almost done with my master's. My last 2 classes they're not very difficult for me. They're not proving too stressful. So now I feel like I have a little bit of extra time and brain power to do the podcast. Yay! The thing that I love the most. I have been trying very hard to acquire a real person job, like I've been told that I should do. That hasn't gone well. I don't know why. And my dogs are clickety-clacking around. And you can't blame it on my face, because these days everything is online anyway. So only the people who have interviewed me have even seen my face, and that's like 6 out of 300 jobs. And I was wondering if everyone else is also struggling with that. According to the internet, I'm not the only one. I don't know what that is. You'd think that a degree in history would help me at least get a friggin' secretarial job, right? I can obviously read and write and answer a phone, do an email, But that has been failing. Oh wow, my watch. Does anyone else wear watches? I feel like I'm weird these days wearing a watch. Anyway, so I can't get a job. I've applied for like 300, most of which I'm disgustingly overqualified for. I've been writing cover letters. All the fancy ones that deal with my degree want cover letters. I'm happy to do it. But 50 of them, and I feel like they aren't even getting read. Even some of the jobs I've applied to work at the tribes around here, which require a degree and proof of my indigenous heritage. And so with that, you'd think that I would be, up in the top of the candidates. No, nothing still. So I don't know what's going on, but I need money in order to live. So if you like me and don't want me to be homeless again like I was when I had no reason to put a frame on my bachelor's degree because it was in a notebook flopping around in the back of my truck while I lived outside, you can join my Patreon. I've also started doing witchy crafts. I can post some pictures or something. I'll post them on my Patreon if you want to go look there. I can post them on my Instagram too, which is still Back Alley Alchemist. I'm going to do the crafts under the title Back Alley Alchemist. I've changed the podcast to Where the Streetlights End because, for some reason, just using the name Back Alley Alchemist on Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, anything like that, everyone just goes, "Oh, you make meth?" Which tells me that I need to do an episode on what alchemy is, because people seem to think that it's just janky chemistry, and I find that offensive. But the Back Alley Alchemist name has to do with, alchemy involves astronomy, celestial bodies, working with that, minerals. There's a lot of spiritualism to it too, so it's a lot more than just chemistry. And I'll have to verify this, and I'll talk about it in my episode on alchemy when I do it, but for a while, alchemy was outlawed because it was considered witchcraft, right? And people didn't like that, so alchemists had to obviously continue their work, and if they didn't, we would probably be back in our current science quite a bit. And they had to come up with these crazy symbols and designs like I have on my face to use in their notes so people wouldn't find their alchemy notes and murder them for being witches. So they used symbols so people wouldn't know what they're... Anyway, that's where the back alley comes from, because it was an illegal practice that did us well anyway. Anyway, so that's that. Personal updates. Can't get a job, join my Patreon, or buy my witchy stuff. Oh, yeah. One of the things... Look at this. Look at this little guy. This is a witch's helper puppet. Or plushie. And he's adorable. And he was difficult to make, and I love him, and he's got a little cape. You can buy that. I'm going to make more of them. Anyway. Yeah, I think that's about it. Long hiatus, doing schoolwork, very tired. I had a quick break that was like 6 weeks during summer. I spent the entire time, dawn till dusk, job searching. Got nothing. I'm poor. Please give me money. I'm here to talk about Linda Hazzard, which almost doesn't quite fall into what I usually talk about, but it kind of does, right? And so, let's get into that. Have you heard of Starvation Heights? So a little bit of backstory here. I am from the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. That's where I grew up. I grew up loving the Olympic Mountains and wandering around the Pacific Ocean and all of that. So when I found out that there was some really unsettling dark history, true crime type of stuff that happened in Olalla, Washington, which is on the Olympic Peninsula, not far from, I mean, I've been there, been through there, at least growing up, I was very interested. Now I'm going to preface this by saying that other people, other YouTube creators and other podcasts have covered the subject of Linda Hazzard and Starvation Heights in very great detail. They've done a better job than I'm going to do. In particular, I learned about it because I follow Ask a Mortician, or Caitlin Doty, on YouTube, and she did a really, really intense episode where she got to go to the places that I'm going to talk about, right? And she got to talk to people who work around the places and who know firsthand what went on and everything. And she's allowed to do that because she's a professional. I don't get to do that because I'm a scumbag. So if you find her, or I believe Morbid, the podcast, does a good job covering it too. Those guys will go into it in a way that I don't get to. I suggest you go and watch/listen to their episodes on the subject because they're awesome and do a good job. And if you think that what I say is interesting, you will get more information about it out of them. Anyway, there we go. So there's a little town in Olalla, Washington, called Olalla in Washington State, up on the Olympic Peninsula, like I said. It is very small. I went there last October because I was learning about it and I was like, oh, that's just like right over there. I'm not going to tell you where I live. I don't live there. I'm not far though. Okay. So I went there, I took a little trip, and I tried to find the old sanitarium, and I tried to find the old cemetery, and it was very difficult. There was like one road, a bunch of big nice houses, a diner, and the ocean. Okay? So eventually on my way out, I saw a dirt path going up in the woods behind a church, and I was like, let's look at that. So I wandered up there, and I found a little old abandoned cemetery, it looked like. Obviously, someone does a bit of groundskeeping, but it was cool. I'll try to attach pictures, if I can find them. I, for some reason, didn't post them on my Instagram or save them in my podcast folder, but I believe that they're around here somewhere. So that was really cool. All of the gravestones were super old, moss covered, and it was creepy. It was really nice. It was all surrounded by woods. One thing I have a complaint about is the hooligans, the youths, I imagine, who apparently go up there and spray paint the gravestones and the trees. So when I was younger, I hung out in cemeteries, obviously a goth kid. But you don't do that. Like, that's a good way to get a curse, right? You get a curse, you get cursed or haunted or something. You go up there and act like a little shit in an old ass cemetery. Come on, get it together. So there's spray paint on the trees of like mushrooms and dongs, and I'm like, come on, really? Of all the things. So if you have teenagers in your life, tell them not to do that. Even if you don't believe in curses, it's still disrespectful as shit, right? So that was annoying, but otherwise, it was super cool. And there's a little trail off of the highway that you can get up there and look around. They probably don't like visitors. That town is super small, but anyway, you can go to that. I don't think that it's the same cemetery where Linda Hazzard buried her victims. I'll tell you about it. I might be getting ahead of myself. Spoilers. But it is a cool old cemetery, and it is in the area where she had her sanitarium. So, there's that. So this little town of Olalla, Washington, made front page news in the 1910s. Internationally, in fact. Because there was a certain crazy bitch named Dr. Linda Hazzard, who had no medical degree, mind you, but was licensed by Washington State as a fasting specialist. So, fasting is a practice that's relatively common among various religions and spiritual paths. Lent for Christians, the fast during Ramadan for Muslims. Mormons apparently like to fast for 24 hours a month sometimes. It comes up in Hinduism, Buddhism. Occasional fasting for spiritual reasons isn't weird on its own. There are also medicinal benefits, health benefits, sometimes. So I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not talking shit about fasting itself, nor homeopathic medicine. I'm talking shit about Linda Hazzard, who believed that the root of all disease and illness was in food. By which she pretty much meant that people were sick because they ate too much food. Hazzard published a book in 1908 called Fasting for the Cure of Disease, in which she explains that in order for one to be healthy, one needs to allow the digestive system to rest, by which she meant literally not eating for a while. Long time, actually. I believe that it's officially known these days that humans are supposed to poop and they have to empty their bowels in full once a day, ideally. Like, you have to poop everything out all the time, and that keeps it regular. According to an article by Paul Kelly, found at the National Institution of Health website, there is good evidence of intestinal atrophy and aclohydria in starvation and severe undernutrition, which means that if you don't eat and you don't poop it out like normal, your intestines and digestive tract can atrophy. The lack of normal use causes the muscles to weaken and can make it impossible to poop like normal and digest food properly. So, just right off the bat, I'm telling you that pooping is good. And Linda Hazzard was wrong about that. If you go a long time not taking the solid shit, the muscles in your intestines grow weak and you have to rebuild them. Just like physical therapy, if you have atrophy in your legs or hands or something after an injury, you're gonna have to rebuild your butt muscles. It happens when people are severe alcoholics and they just shit liquid for 10 years, you know? You have to practice pooping after that. You have to work it out. And so she was wrong. Now that I have told you that she was wrong about not eating and not pooping and how you should have nothing at all in your digestive tract for long periods of time, I will continue. For some reason, this was appealing to many people. She would give her patients small servings of vegetable broth as their food, and that was it. They'd have like 2 cups total of like tomato broth and flush their systems with enemas every day. I'm going to forewarn you, I'm going to be talking quite a lot about poop and butts here, just because it's the most upsetting aspect in my mind of what she did. And she would give the patients massages, as she called them. But people who were there, witnesses to such massages, have said that those massages were not massages, and they were more like vicious beatings. Like I said, weirdly enough, this regimen was appealing to many people, and patients were seeking her out to come and get beaten and anally violated by her, thinking that she was going to make them so healthy. Hazzard's best remembered patients were 2 sisters from England named Claire and Dorothea Williamson. A guy named Greg Olson is an author from Olalla, Washington, and he wrote a book about her called Starvation Heights. I've read bits and pieces of it, but I do not own a physical copy. I would like a physical copy someday. All right. So the sisters, Claire and Dorothea, had no serious illness when they sought out Linda Hazzard. They had some minor ailments like rheumatic pains, and Claire had been told that she had a dropped uterus. I don't know what that means. It's probably something. And the sisters were big into alternative medicine. They liked homeopathy. They believed that natural remedies and things like eating right or fancy teas or probably even acupuncture, stuff like that, was a better way to go to improve their health than traditional Western medicine. And I can get with that. I will go really far out of my way to avoid taking a pill, even though I know that if I just take a couple ibuprofen, I'll stop being bitchy a lot of the time, just because I get bitchy because my shit hurts. And if I just took a fucking anti-inflammatory, it would feel better and I would be nice again. But I always prefer to try, maybe if I just eat better this week, maybe if I get a little bit of exercise, maybe if I do some stretching, I bet my problem's just that I haven't slept. Did you see that fly? There was a fly in front of, there it is again. Get out of here. I like to have the door open because I like the weather being inside. So they come in. But yeah, I understand wanting homeopathic medicine because I feel like, I don't know. I like it better. But the problem with homeopathic medicine usually is that there's not a lot of proof that it works all the time. Most modern medicine, like Western medicine, is designed because there's stuff in plants and things that is helpful. And you eat the plants and you get a little bit of the effects and it improves some stuff. But pills and medication is designed from taking that useful part out of the plant and making more of it or combining it with other useful things. And that's why the pills work better than the tea. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like if you have a serious ailment, you're better off taking the concentrated, isolated, only the useful part of that plant rather than trying to cure your serious issue with tea. That's where it is. I feel like, okay, I'm ranting a little bit. Homeopathic medicine is great for small ailments. Maybe you need help sleeping. Maybe you're a little bit wonky, But if you have a serious issue, you're dying, don't try to cure your kidney infection with leaves. Just take an antibiotic. Get it over with. Because if the leaves don't work, then you're sitting there with an infection for a year and your kidney fails, and then you're not going to be able to do anything about it because you're just going to get a shriveled up kidney because you let it be infected for too long. Okay, I'd like to think that you all know. Carrying on. So Claire and Dorothea were into homeopathic medicine. They were vegetarians, for example. And they believed that Hazzard was exactly the doctor they needed because she was pretty famous. She wrote a book. She was talking about fasting and how it saves people's lives, and this was novel to them. They liked the idea about being as healthy as possible without doctors, real doctors, okay? So the sisters arrived in Seattle in February of 1911, all signed up for their treatment at this beautiful countryside sanitarium that they saw in Linda Hazzard's ads. And they were told that the place wasn't ready yet. So they were instead put up in an apartment in Capitol Hill in Seattle, where Linda Hazzard began their so-called treatment by feeding them their tomato broth and not letting them eat anything else. 2 cups a day, that's it. And then she would put them in a bathtub where she gave them enemas for hours on end. Hours. She would be douching their assholes out for hours, and the girls would faint from it. And they would pass out, from the... It's the R word, in my opinion. They were going there under false pretenses, convinced that they were going to be so healthy, and then just manipulated by this person that they trusted, who was a professional in their mind. And she was just ramming things up their asses until they passed out, and then she'd continue doing it to their passed out bodies. So that's messed up. It's actually very upsetting. I personally have a very vivid imagination, and I can see it in my mind like it's a movie, and I'm gonna have nightmares for weeks. Actually, when I was first researching this, I could not get the image out of my head, and I'm not gonna talk about that part anymore, because I don't want to suffer needlessly, and I don't want y'all to suffer needlessly. But I've let you know that happened, and that was a big part of her whole treatment thing, and it's fucked up. The enemas are not usually even necessary. I mean, yeah, if you need your tubes cleaned out for surgery so you don't get infected when they cut you, I think that's the main reason for an enema usually. Or if you're very ill and your body's not capable of absorbing certain nutrients through your normal digestive tract, or you need them very quickly, then you can do that. But don't just go... There's no verified, true and honest, proven medical reason that you should just be douching your asshole all the time, unless you need to be cleaned out for surgery so there's no bacteria in there, or to absorb nutrients that your body needs desperately and you can't get them otherwise. I'm not a medical doctor, but I'd like it that if you were considering enemas, that you look into it and only trust people who are medical professionals about it. It cannot be healthy. It's not going to do you a lot of good, and it's a sin in the eyes of God. Anyway, so, on to Claire and Dorothea. After about 2 months of being literally tortured in an apartment in Seattle, the sisters were moved to Linda Hazzard's house in Olalla. At this point, they weighed only 70 pounds. My dog weighs 78 pounds, and she's only 2.5 feet long. She's a chunky-ass pit bull, but I don't think that any adult human over 4 feet tall should weigh only 70 pounds. It's unhealthy, right? So the sisters allegedly had a reputation of doing strange alternative medicine things. Like I said, they liked that sort of shit. And their family members constantly gave them shit for it. Which is why, when they went to Seattle, they decided not to tell anybody. They were worried that if they told their family they were going to Seattle to stay with a fasting specialist, to get homeopathic health care, when they were already healthy, their family would tell them no and talk shit and call them stupid and say that's a waste of money. Don't do that. So they didn't tell anyone for fear of judgment. And that meant that no one who cared about them and would have wanted to do something about what would happen here had any idea where they were or what was happening in the first place. Until a mysterious and creepy cable, like a telegram, I guess, arrived for their childhood nurse who took care of them when they were kids, named Margaret Conway, when she was in Australia. The message was so weird and vague that she became extremely concerned and bought herself a ticket to come to Washington on a boat. She was like, this is sketchy. Something weird is going on. I'm going on a rescue mission. Fuck you guys. I'm saving my girls. So Hazzard's husband met with Margaret, the nurse, when she landed in Vancouver, Canada, which is just across the water from the Olympic Peninsula of Washington. And he told her that Claire was fucking dead. According to what Linda had said, Claire died as a result of drugs that she had been given as a child. And these drugs had supposedly shrunk her internal organs and caused her liver to fail. Hazzard claimed that Claire was far too close to death by the time she came into her care, and no treatment would have been able to bring her back to health. Now, hopefully I found and was able to put up a picture of the sisters before they went to stay with Linda Hazzard, but they looked fine, and like I said, they had no major ailments. They weren't sick. They just thought this would be good for them overall. They had no physical or health complaints other than the dropped uterus and some joint pain, it sounds like. So, but apparently Linda Hazzard is saying that she was close to death at that time. And that's nonsense. Now, Margaret knew that this was bullshit, and she went to go see Claire's body, which was displayed at Butterworth Mortuary near Pike Place Market in Seattle, and the corpse looked nothing like Claire, right? This woman knows her. She partially raised her. She's known her since she was a child. She looks at this dead body, and she's like, that's not Claire. Her hair was the wrong color. Her face was fucking different. Her hands didn't look right. This wasn't Claire, okay? Margaret then went on to Olalla and found Claire's sister Dorothea there, now only weighing 50 pounds. My other dog weighs twice that, and I make fun of his skinny ankles all the time. This is not enough for a grown woman to weigh. Margaret said that Dora's bones were sticking out like a fucking stegosaurus, I imagine. I found a photo that claimed to be of Dorothea at this time, but then when I saved it, it was saved as someone named Daisy May. So I don't know if this is actually her, but I'll try to put the picture up here, and I'm moving my hand so when I'm editing, I will know that this is when I want to put the picture up. Yeah. And even if it's not Dorothea, that's a woman who was in Linda Hazzard's care, so you can get kind of an idea of what I mean. And she couldn't sit without pain. She was obviously quite starving to death. However, she didn't want to leave Olalla or Hazzard's care with Margaret. Margaret tried to convince her. She was like, dude, you're dying, your sister's dead, you look like shit, you need to come with me. But Margaret couldn't convince her. Dorothea was like, no, she's making me healthy. So that tells me that she was very, very much manipulated, brainwashed, right? Like cult shit. So here where shit got a different kind of fucked up. And part of why I wanted to do this is because this comes with a warning that I will give you at the end. Linda Hazzard had been appointed the executor of Claire's estate. I didn't mention it earlier because I forgot that it was notable, but Claire and Dorothea were from a pretty well-off family over there in England, so their estate was considerable. Linda Hazzard, this stinky old bitch, was now legally in control of Claire's estate, and Dorothea had given her power of attorney over herself, making her Dorothea's legal guardian. The Hazzards were wearing these women's clothes, had in their possession thousands of dollars worth of their fancy jewels, and they showed absolutely zero shame in any of it. Linda Hazzard was interested in spiritualism, theosophy, and the occult. So Margaret was worried that she was using some kind of weird dark magic to hypnotize and mind control her patients, because Dora would not be convinced to leave. I recorded an audio-only episode of Back Alley Alchemist like 2 years ago that talked about theosophy, and the main point of the episode was tulpas, but theosophy bore mention as well. And theosophy is super weird and basically cultural appropriation on crack, and has itself a clear pipeline to white supremacy. So anytime I see theosophy mentioned, I cringe a little bit. It got real big in the US during the spiritualism movement that happened in the late 1800s. And there's some interesting stuff that happened around then. Anyway, I'll talk about that a little bit later, if I feel like it. Anyway, it looks like old Hazzy Bitch was strongly influenced by these forms of spiritualism that were popular around at the time. So who knows what weird ideas she had and what weird-ass people she got them from. Anyway, so Margaret couldn't get Dorothea to leave, which was even more complicated because Hazzard had legal power over her and all of her money. So Margie summoned her uncle to come and help. The uncle was John Herbert, and he was able to convince Hazzard to release Dorothea to him for something like $1,000. So he had to buy his dying niece off of her, like a dog. So they got Dorothea out of the hellhole, but they still needed to do something about the fucked up and unbelievable death of her sister Claire, because she was dead. That wasn't her body in the mortuary. It was being called her body, but where was her real body? And was it even worse? Then, they had to do something about it. They needed to find the British vice consul in Tacoma and try for a murder trial, right? So the uncle and the British vice consul were digging into what had been going on, and they realized that several other wealthy people had died mysteriously under Hazzard's care. A lot of people had in fact signed over their estates to her prior to their deaths, just like Claire had done. At least 12 people in total ended up starving to death under her care, and many of them gave her a lot of fucking money. It's possible that a lot more people were victims of her weird shit, but we know of at least 12. So on August 15th, 1911, my eye itches. On August 15th, 1911, Linda Hazzard was arrested for first-degree murder for starving Claire to death. In January, she went on trial. Ooh, I'll do this with my hands. I got a mugshot. Tons of people crowded around the courthouse to watch and listen as people who worked for the Hazzards testified to how her patients, specifically the sisters, would scream and cry out in pain while they were being treated. They talked about the enemas, the beatings, and how she would basically cook them in baths that were boiling hot. On top of the physical starvation and abuse, the prosecution brought forth accusations of financial starvation to describe the seemingly endless acts of fraud that the Hazzards had performed by forging checks and letters, emptying the sisters' bank accounts and estates. There was also speculation that the Hazzards had a shady business deal with the Butterworth mortuary, and had gotten Claire's body switched out with someone else to make her look healthier than the probably obviously shriveled husk that would have been Claire's real body. She was probably even gnarlier looking than Dora had been when Margaret found her looking like a pile of sticks. The connection between Hazzard and the Butterworth mortuary has not been proven, but I feel like other people I've heard talk about the situation have been pretty well convinced that there was some shit going on. I feel like someone definitely switched the body out before it was displayed. Right? And there's no way that that could be done without the mortuary knowing. It either had to be someone who worked at the mortuary who switched it out, or they would have to have been so lax. How could they not notice someone else that they don't know carrying a body in and carrying a body out or whatever? It's strange to me. If it is the case that the mortuary had a deal with Hazzard to help cover up what she did to Claire, I feel like it would stand to reason that similar things had been done with the bodies of other patients. that may have something to do with her getting away with it for a while. I wonder if other patients had gone there and been cremated or something. So when the family was notified, they had nothing to see that would weird them out and cause suspicion. Sorry, I'm not straight, so I can't just like sit normal. So, yeah, it's possible that she only got caught because Margaret came and saw the wrong body. And there was a sister left there to go visit. Two of them going there meant that Margaret had a reason to go to the actual sanitarium rather than just to the mortuary to identify or get the body. I doubt there were many couples or groups of people who went together, right? So that, like, yeah, if there's just one person going and they die and the family's notified that they died, they're like, oh man, they went to the sanitarium for health reasons, and then the health reasons didn't work out and they're dead. That sucks. But in this case, there were two of them, and someone came and they got to actually go see what the patients looked like before they died, which, as you may recall, was not good. So during the trial, Hazzard refused to accept any responsibility for Claire's death or the deaths of anyone at all. She believed that there was pretty much no such thing as starvation and that food deprivation could not result in death. That death is just what happens when your body is messed up and nothing can stop it. She thought that if you died while fasting, you were going to die anyway, no matter what, and the lack of food had nothing at all to do with it. Which is fascinating for a number of reasons, because honestly, the one thing that all living beings ever born on this earth have always known to be true, from the moment of birth, is that food is good and necessary. The whole damn system of the planet is designed around organic bodies consuming one another. Like, literally, it's the transference of energy. Okay? So, our bodies need energy to function. We have to get that energy by consuming something else that's alive that has energy in its body so it can function. And we consume that, and our body takes that energy and uses it to move around so we can affect our environment. And then ultimately, we too will be consumed, whether it be by Hannibal Lecter or by bacteria as we rot in the ground. And then that bacteria or that Hannibal Lecter will use that energy to continue going on and affecting their environment, and that's how the world works. Sorry. Hazzard apparently believed that the trial was not about justice, but about tearing her down for being a successful woman, and to do with the ongoing war between homeopathic and conventional medicine. Other natural medicine practitioners agreed. And I feel like they were just latching on to whatever they could to try to save their own asses, or they were worried that if Hazzard was convicted, it would lead to they themselves getting in trouble for doing the same shit. I haven't heard of any other major cases of people doing this to their patients, but if the general public perceived other natural medicines and homeopathic practices to be the same as this, they would have a hard time. Right? It sets a precedent that people who call themselves natural or homeopathic doctors would then be under the umbrella of a murderer, like Linda Hazzard. People would not trust them as much. So I feel like that's why the community rallied behind her in this case. So, fasting, right? A belief in fasting for physical and spiritual health goes back thousands of years. Even, I think, Jesus loved fasting, right? I've fasted for spiritual reasons. I had to prepare for a shamanic trance one time that required that I not eat for a couple days. That was a crazy experience. I will tell you about that someday if there is interest in that story. You know, there are reasons to do it for health. Like if you have a cranky asshole or a bunch of inflammation, you fast for a day and then you do like a really plain diet and slowly introduce food so you can see what it is that you have a like an issue with that your body doesn't like, so you know not to eat that anymore. So there are reasons to do it, but like I wouldn't do it for multiple days. I wouldn't just not eat for days. I'm not going to shit on people for doing it by their own choice, but in the case of Linda Hazzard and other people like this, the thing is that it's proven that it's bad for you to not eat. You need to eat. You need your energy or you're going to die. But it's when, and then also people convincing you to do it, to take your entire estate, all of your money, like getting money from people to make them do it is the problem. And you need your body to function. And, you'll get all weird and die. And it's just to fill someone's pockets. And, while fasting for spiritual and physical health is an ancient practice, it got popular in Western culture in the 1800s, along with the revival of many other old beliefs from various cultures. And this one obviously hit the medical community because it deals directly with the body. This practice and the basis of Hazzard's philosophy stemmed from the spirituality movement that was spreading through the West in the late 19th century, like I said, often attributed to the popularity of theosophy, which I talked about a little bit. And yeah, so the jury in Hazzard's trial didn't agree with her that she was just being prosecuted for stepping on the toes of conventional doctors. It was too outlandish. What she was doing wasn't... Yeah, it was called homeopathic medicine, therefore it didn't need to be proven scientifically like things do now. But, it was killing people. And she was getting so much money from it that they were like, no, this doesn't have anything to do with homeopathy versus traditional medicine. This is about you being a fraud and a murderer. Okay? So she was sentenced to hard labor at the prison in Walla Walla, Washington. She went from Olalla to Walla Walla, Washington. And her medical license was revoked. I still find it fascinating that she had a license at all, ever, considering she had 0 credentials and no proper education in medicine. But whatever. I'm not a policymaker in 1910. She served 2 years and supposedly fasted the entire time to prove that she wasn't making her shit up. And I don't believe that she ate nothing at all for 2 years while working hard labor. It's simply not possible. She was sneaky eating. She had to have been sneaky eating. According to a medically reviewed article at the site Medical News Today, the average person can technically survive for a month or 2 without food. Scientists haven't studied human starvation to its full extent because that would be evil, and the ethics simply don't allow for it, so our data usually comes from studying hunger strikes and famine. Anyway, a typical human of about 154 pounds, which is a decent average, I suppose, has enough calories, energy, stored to survive for about 3 months. But a lot of people who participated in hunger strikes died after less than 2. This is because we need more than just the energy, which is called calories, for our bodies to function. We also burn through protein, carbs, fats, vitamins, minerals, etc. for our basic existing. If we aren't ingesting any of that stuff, the body starts to break down and our actual meat tissue is used as fuel for our organs to keep working. So we disintegrate as our organs eat our muscles and fat. And unfortunately, our organs are also made out of meat tissue, so even those are broken down, and that includes the heart. It's possible, I suppose, that vegetable broth could have enough vitamins in it to keep you going, but if you're gonna have a really, really bad fucking time, especially after those couple of months. All right, so the reason that I chose this as my topic, coming back from the giant hiatus and the name change, the rebrand, and whatever have you, is because I think it's important. Partially, I think it's interesting because I'm from the area. Secondly, because it freaks me out that people listen to people for no reason and then they die from it, which is the main thing, really. Because it's more true crimey, I think. Maybe it's dark history. It's dark history / true crimey, and I don't want to get into the true crime umbrella for my work. I think it's overplayed. I do love me a few true crime people, of course, but I don't see that for myself. But what makes this interesting to me is history, the social element of cult-like behavior and thought, and the use of spiritual beliefs to manipulate, control, and steal from people, right? I think that it's important to pay attention to the beliefs that people use to justify the things that they do to or with other people, and to be critical of those beliefs and what kind of person one may be if they subscribe to those beliefs. So this sort of thing is, like I said, it's what leads to cults, and accidental death from things like Hazzard's homeopathic practice, the torture, starvation. We see this in the anti-vaxxer movements, right? And I think it's important to, when you believe someone, when someone says something to you, and no one's ever told you that before, what is it that makes you trust them? Why do you believe one person over another person? A lot of times we believe people because they're taking advantage of our need for community, or a need for validation in who we are or in beliefs that we already have, or we say we distrust a group of people or something, and this person is giving us a reason that validates that distrust. Now, sometimes that's fine. Other times it can be used to really fuck you over. So if two people are coming to you and they're telling you two conflicting things, you believe one of them and you think the other one's full of shit. I want you to think to yourself, why is it that you trust that person and think the other person is an idiot? What is it that makes you put your trust in them over this person? And I think that that is critical for the well-being of our society and ongoing progress and health for everyone in your own butt, to be good and healthy and happy. So I just want you to think about that. And spirituality and religion have been it's just constant that people use that, because spirituality and religion are where humans find comfort, especially in times of chaos or overwhelming sadness or lack of hope. And we go to spiritualism hoping that God or our ancestors or this shiny rock is going to be allowed to give us some peace and some hope in a good life or future or world, when everything else seems complicated and shitty, or we're grieving, And like in the case of Linda Hazzard, her reign of terror seems to have been caused mostly by greed. It appears that her practice and what she did was for the purpose of manipulating and subduing rich people so that she could quietly kill them, pass it off as inevitable because she did everything she could to help them, as she said, and then she took all their money. And she may have also truly believed in her practice. I'm sure she did to some extent, but if she did truly believe that her regimen of starvation and anal rape would save people's lives, why then did she only work with rich people? You'd think she would accept any client who could afford her rates, but she seemed to have only taken clients who could afford her and also had vast resources and estates that she could steal afterward. And this has always been a huge thing, Think Henry VIII. From Henry VIII and his starting of the Church of England and kicking off the Protestant Reformation just because he wanted to get a divorce, and the Catholic Church wouldn't let him. Henry VIII was a devout Catholic. He didn't have Protestant beliefs himself. He didn't believe in he was a Catholic. But he changed the primary religion of the entire kingdom because it would allow him to do what he wanted. On a smaller scale than that, think of the phony spiritualists who practice today. Like the spirituality side of TikTok, you get flooded with spam posts about how you were called to this video by your spirit guides, and this card was for you, and if you like that this card is for you, give me $500 right now. But it's just like some stinky white bitch, and there's no way that she just put a card down there and took a picture of it and said, this was for you. It's not for me. You don't even know me. That's not how divination works, you dumb bitch. I'm not giving you money. So remember not to trust people if it's clear that they have significant financial gain. They can get a lot of money. They want stuff from you. And it's possible that the only reason they're telling you what you want to hear is because they want you to give them money. So that's that. And that's my high horse. And that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I think it's a serious problem. That being said, I do divination. You can pay me to do a moon tarot reading for you. Or you can join my Patreon and you can fund me continuing to live in a house, because that's looking sketchy and I lived outside for like a lot of my adult life, and I'm happy that I have a reason to have a glass frame on my bachelor's degree, and I would like to continue living in a house, but no one will hire me. So join my Patreon so I can make videos and also live, and you can also buy my witchy stuff. That's all, I suppose. I hope that it didn't suck for my first recording in who knows how fucking... I know how long, like 14 months. I love you, and don't die.